Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Albanach Knitter. I'm Andrew and this is my little space on the internet where we talk things knitting. Show you around my place here on the Isle of Arran off the west coast of Scotland. But this episode is a little bit different because I'm sitting here at early o'clock on a Monday morning about to get on the ferry over to the mainland of Scotland, and I'm having a week on retreat in Northumberland. That's on the northeast coast of England. Lots of beautiful things to see there, lots of knitting to do, lots of coffee to drink, and some adventures on the way. So welcome along on this little bit of a different episode as we do a bit of a travel log. Great to see you. Well, after a smooth sailing over to the mainland and a catastrophic visit to Quick Fit to get a tyre changed, I'm now in Glasgow, and it's great to be here because I'm here to drop off about 150 beanies from the Beanie-Along to a great Glasgow charity. So let's go. Well, it's great to welcome you to Glasgow, bustling city, and spent a lot of my working years here and in other cities, but I'm noticing how much of an island boy I've become. I'm desperate to get back to the quiet again, but I'm heading back to the car now, having dropped off the beanies, and then heading to the wonderful rural Northumberland for a few days peace and quiet. But Glasgow. So I've made it down the A1, which is a great big long road that goes all the way from Edinburgh, all the way down to London, although I haven't had to go that far. I'm just over the border into northern England, and I'm staying near the Holy Isle of Lindisfarne, which I am sure you will see in the rest of this video. I'm in my lovely little room here. It's very cosy, very warm, and just what the doctor ordered in terms of opportunity just to get away for a little while. My sort of plan for this week is to visit some of the beautiful places that are around this area, which have a deep significance for me. My aim is to go and just be in those spaces, to enjoy them, to be quiet, to be still, although I'll tell you some stories on the way. But my tools are many this week for my retreat. I've got all my reading materials that I'm hoping to work my way through to aid my reflection. My next big resource is my trusty journal. This is where all the deep thoughts, all the deep thoughts and stuff will end up this week as I process my experience. And of course, the other major tool for this week is my knitting. Now, it's a very simple knit, and I was knitting on this before. You can't see it because of the way the light is, but it's just a simple grey beanie that I'm finishing off. And so what I'll be doing is I'll be going out, experiencing my stuff, and then finding somewhere to settle, get those needles going, And as the meal is going, just allowing the thoughts to flow, the reflections to happen. So that's the plan. So it's a knitting retreat with a slightly different experience. I'm pretty much going to be on my own for most of the week, and that for me is absolutely wonderful. Thank you for coming along on the journey. Again, this is a very different episode of the blog here, or the vlog, or whatever you want to call it. But I hope you enjoy watching along and maybe even getting into the rhythm of things yourselves. So it's the first evening of my travel day, and tomorrow we'll see what happens. Well, it's day 2 of my little retreat here by Lindisfarne, and here I am on the Holy Island of Lindisfarne this morning, and behind me are the remains of the medieval monastery that was on this site. There was a monastic site here for a long time. It started off with St. Aidan in the 7th century, who is one of my favourite dead guys. He really is one of my favourites. It's a beautiful, glorious day, and I'm looking forward to spending some peace and quiet, just mooching around here, showing you a few of the sights, and I'm sure it'll be a great day. This particular space means a lot to me because when I must have been about 8 or 9, maybe even 10 or 11, I was certainly that sort of age. I was walking across this field with my parents. We had come to a holiday park not far from here, a place called Haggerston Castle, and we came almost every year. And I was walking across this field, across this path, and lo and behold, a wild goose happened to start chasing us, and we ran across this field. And we often tell that story in the family. But a few years later on, a good 10, 15 years later, I discovered that the Celtic Christians used the image of the wild goose to describe the Holy Spirit. And so I like to think that perhaps some person somewhere was witness to Andrew Clark being chased by a wild goose and maybe prayed, "Oh, wild goose, Holy Spirit, will you pursue that young man?" Well, at the age of 15, I did become a Christian. So I like to think that there's something of a beginnings of my Christian experience here on Holy Island. But to say the medieval monastery behind me, but I'm going to take you up now, just up that hill there, up on that slightly raised area called the Huff, and I'm going to show you St. Aidan's original monastic prayer chapel and show you why it was quite so significant. Just over my shoulder, just above my finger, you can see a little lump on the horizon. That is Bamburgh Castle. And if you're a fan of The Last Kingdom or Vikings, you might remember the name Bamburgh or Bebimber. And that was the ancient capital of Northumbria. And it was the king of Northumbria, King Oswald, who, having gained his kingdom back as a Christian, wanted to have missionaries come over. And the first missionary that came over from the Scottish island of Iona was a man called Corman. He came and he did the thing, and he didn't get anywhere. And he went back to Iona and said, "These people are a crude people. They're just not interested in the things of God." And it was St. Aidan who said, "Well, maybe, Brother Corman, if you'd given them the milk of the word rather than the meaty bits of the word, they might have responded better." And that really was Aidan's qualification to come over here to Lindisfarne and set up his church, and he was indeed successful. And these ruins in the ground behind me are thought to be the very first signs of his monastic settlement here on the island, and strategic because from here he could look over to Bamburgh and he could pray for the principalities and the powers and all that be over there in Northumbria. I'm over now at the other end of the Huff, this raised rock promontory bit at the side of the island, the south part of the island, and over my shoulder here there's another little island which is normally cut off by the tide. This is a tidal island that's closed from the mainland, which is up here, twice a day, and this is called St Cuthbert's Island. And St Cuthbert was the successor to St Aidan, and he would often go out there and get away from his monastic community for a bit of peace and quiet. And there's a little church remains there after St Cuthbert. It's a lovely little place to go and sit. But Holy Island today, because it's a beautiful day and because it's sort of autumn holiday times, it's absolutely heaving with people. So I don't know if we're going to have much chance for some peace and quiet today, but even just to be here is a tonic for the soul. It's one of the most beautiful spots, I think, certainly in this area, but certainly in the north of England. You can see it in the background there, just beside the watchtower, Lindisfarne Castle. It's a much later castle, wasn't necessarily here at the time of the early saints and the Vikings and whatnot, but it's a spectacular view. And just behind me there again, you can see the remains of the later monastery. So this place was a significant place in the history of the United Kingdom, as it's now called, because from this place, from the monastery that was on this site, pretty much the whole of England was effectively converted to Christianity by St Aidan and his monks. It's known as one of the cradles of Christianity here, that and Iona, both linked, of course, and had a significant impact. In fact, the monks that grew out from here took Christianity all the way through France, way down into the northern parts of Italy. Such was their endeavour. So it's a special place for us, but it's also a special place that has a place in the history of Europe. And when it's still enough and you catch it at the right time, you can hear the seals singing on the dunes. Well, it's been an absolutely great day on Lindisfarne. It's such a beautiful place, and the sun was shining and all the wildlife was out doing its thing. It was a little bit chilly, but that's because of the time of year. The tide is now in on the island. It's cut off, and I think it's time for my tide to be in as well. So, see you tomorrow. Well, hello, it's day 3 of my retreat here in the beautiful Northumberland, and I've come away out into the wilds of Northumberland to a community called Old Bewick. And just outside Old Bewick there's a beautiful little spot. There's a little chapel just over there. It's the chapel of the Holy Trinity, and it's the most beautiful space, which I'll show you in just a few moments. But first of all, I'm here for the shed. This shed is actually called a pustynia, which is a Russian word. It's a little prayer shed, a place for folks to come, to sit in the quiet, in the stillness, to meditate, to fast, to get away from it all. And I believe this shed has a connection with the Northumbria community, which is a new monastic community that I am a part of. And I think the folks from the community put this here. It's got a special place in the history of the Northumbria community. And so I want to show you this little pustynia, this place of stillness, of quietness, of prayer, here in the seclusion of the Northumbrian countryside. This place is just a wooden shed. It's just a wooden shed like you would get from any garden centre. But it's not just a wooden shed. I think, as I was saying earlier, the Celts have this concept of thin places. They believed that there were places in the world where perhaps places that had been prayed in for many years, or by particular people perhaps, and they would call these places thin places because it seems like the veil between heaven and earth is at its very thinnest. And this little Pustinia and the church next door, it is a thin place. Every time I've been here, there's been such a profound sense of the presence of God. And just in the drawer, a book of poetry by Wendell Berry, The Peace of Wild Things, and I want to read to you that beautiful poem. The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood-drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the place of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and am free. And this is the chapel of the Holy Trinity at Old Bewick. It's a 1,000-year-old place of prayer, and it's the most exquisite place in this little area. It's absolutely beautiful. This simple chapel must be one of the most beautiful places that I know. It is very, very simple. It's bare stone, it's hard wooden pew, but just glorious light and beautiful atmosphere. It lends itself to worship, to praise, and to stillness.
O people that on earth do dwell, sing to the Lord with cheerful voice. Him serve with fear, his praise foretell. Come ye before him, and we approach with joy his call.
I'm here now in the town of Albanach, and behind me is the old Albanach train station, which is now a huge second-hand bookshop called Barter Books. I'm going to show you around. Well, it's day 4 of my retreat, and my lovely plan for today was that I was going to go and stand in the North Sea for 6 hours and recite Psalms. However, Storm Babette has blown in overnight and the waves are too high and it's too windy. So, you know, what a shame. I was really looking forward to that. But instead, of going to Lindisfarne again today, because there's really no shelter there, I've come to Bamburgh, again, the ancient capital of Northumbria, and for you Last Kingdom watchers, where Uhtred, son of Uhtred, had his little kingdom. I don't think he's around today, but his castle is just over there, and I might try and show you that from a distance in a little while. Bamburgh Castle, absolutely magnificent, rather blustery, glorious. Now this is a very good sign. St Aidan's Church Bamburgh is open and all are welcome, even the Scots. And there she is. Isn't she beautiful? And the bells are even ringing for you folks. How's that? It's a lovely spot, and as I say, this is the spot where they think that St Aidan died, and there's a little plaque inside to commemorate that fact, which I'll show you just as we get there. That's the flag of St George flying up there, the English flag. That's okay. It's England, we can allow that. And here we go. Come on in.
It's beautifully calm and quiet today. Really wasn't expecting to be the only person here. Last time I came here it was heaving with people.
This is a memorial to a famous lass in these parts, Grace Darling. She famously risked her life to save some sailors who were floundering in the sea just nearby here, and she's remembered for her valiant efforts. And we're encouraged to remember all who are sailing on the seas today. That's especially important during Storm Babette because it's pretty wild out there. And this area at the back of the church is where, in this tradition, the infant baptisms or the adult baptisms would take place, and traditionally held away at this end of the church because the baptisms were almost always held near the door as a signifier of the entry into the Christian faith. It's still an absolutely wild day here in Northumberland. I am in the walled town of Berwick upon Tweed, and I'm about to brave the weather to head over to see Jennie Howes' yarn shop, to introduce you to Jennie, her wonderful yarns and her spinning. So I'm going to have to take a run for it. I've come in out of the rain and dried off a little bit in Jennie's wonderful studio here. This is Jennie, and she's the owner of this beautiful place in Berwick upon Tweed, a lovely walled town which is quite a mixed history. It's been Scotland, it's been England, it's been its own little thing, but this is a beautiful little oasis here in the middle. And I say Jennie's here, and I came across Jennie's shop just the other day and I thought I have to come back and do a little bit of filming. So Jennie, it's great to meet you, and great to be sharing with you in your shop here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey with your beautiful hand-spun yarn, and how long you've been crafting?
Okay. Well, I've been crafting since I can't remember. Not doing it. I was sort of brought up, and both my grandmothers taught me to knit and crochet, and then I learned to sew with my mum. And then as soon as I could do it all, they said, right, well, you just make everything you want. So that was it. So I was on the journey then. Yeah. And then I've done it all my life. And I had a small business sort of when I was in my early 20s, but it just wasn't the right time. So I went away from it, and I come back about 12, 13 years ago and took it up as a full-time job. So I've been working full-time in wool, doing everything. So I design all my own knitwear and crochet, and I make patterns, and I spin all the yarn so people can use the yarn to make my patterns up, or indeed any other pattern they want. Yeah. And I started spinning fleece, and I still spin a lot of fleeces, and sure. I have when you learn to spin, you get lots of people who appear out of the woodwork with fleeces and say, would you like? And you can be quite selective about that. So I spin I have a friend in my village where I live in Coldingham who has the most beautiful flock of Shetland sheep, and she keeps them especially for spinners, so I love to spin those. And then I have another local farmer, a shepherdess local to here, who keeps Texel sheep, blue Texels, and so I spin those as well, and they're really beautiful to spin. And I've just been spinning for a young woman who works for she works in Nature Conservancy, and she got some Shetland fleece that had been in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire Wildlife Trust conservation grazing flock, so I've been spinning that for her. Really nice things. And then these also, I work with wool brokers and the wool marketing board, and I buy specific fleeces from specific places from them. So that's what all these natural colours are. They come from as far afield as the Falkland Islands, New Zealand, Australia, the Lake District, I've got Herdwicks, I've got Swaledales, I've got some Faroese wool, I've got lots of lovely Shetlands, Scandinavian wools. So, and they're just all naturals, and they're just really lovely to work with. They have amazing textures.
And how long have you had this lovely studio here?
I'm in my 5th year now in here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you started just before lockdown and the pandemic and all those sorts of things.
Yeah,
So,
I did. It was good timing.
Well, you've come through. That's really excellent. Well, we're going to have a little bit of a look round, and Jenny's going to tell us a little bit about some of the yarns that we've got here.
So, unusually for a hand spinner, I spin mostly singles yarns, so they're unplied, and a lot of people think that it might be tricky to knit with, but I do all my knitwear and my crochet and my weaving with singles yarns, and I've developed a technique which means that they are very balanced and they work really well. So you can see, if I just take a couple off the shelf here, just a couple of different fleeces so that you can see the different look of them, really. And this is the first one I'll show you is a Masham wool. So this comes from the Masham sheep, and it's a mule sheep, and this is quite a hairy wool, and but it's a very long fibre, so it's quite drapey, and you'd use it, I would probably use that for making a shawl with, because it's nice and long fibres and holds its shape well.
It's got a beautiful haze.
It has.
You can see the fluffy haze.
And if you dye this, if you over dye on these greys, they make really, really gorgeous yarns, and the haze picks up the dye before the rest of the yarn, so you end up with this gorgeous almost two-tone kind of yarn with that one. And then this one is a natural grey Shetland wool, and you can see that there are little twiddles and bumps in it, but they just come out when you're doing the knitting. They just smooth out.
So it's from the spinning process.
It's just twist. It's just a high twist yarn, and this is a really nice, a really bouncy kind of yarn. And that and although it's semi-worsted spun, semi-woolen, semi-worsted, I would use that for doing colour work with, and because again with the Shetland wool you always get this lovely halo when you wash it, and the stitches just kind of melt into each other, so you end up with
you want something that will give you a good definition to your colour work as well.
So that's nice. And then this one is called a Polworth, and this comes from Australia, and you'll see that this is quite a slubby yarn. It's not ultra smooth, it's not all the same thickness, but you end up with a really nice texture, and it's so bouncy. There's no kemp fibres in it, so it's really, really soft and squishy, and that's just lovely for wearing next to the skin.
It looks soft. You can see it. You can see the soft fleecy bits there.
And there's a nice sheen to it as well. So and then just other yarns that you can see the texture in these is really different. This one's a Faroese wool, and that's quite hairy, but you would perhaps knit and felt with that, so you end up with a really dense, like for mittens or a hat that you want to felt up, so that would be nice. And then the Swaledale is also this one's quite a coarse fleece. There's a lot of kemp in it, but I would use that for like making a cushion cover or a bag or something, so not something that you would wear.
No, you wouldn't want it next to your neck necessarily.
No. So so there we go.
Okay.
And then there's something perhaps like that. This one is plied, and this is a Wensleydale wool, and it's I plied this one because it's such a long fibre. You don't need to put an awful lot of twist into it when you're spinning it, so it's good to ply it back on itself just to give it a bit more stability. So that one is plied.
Beautiful.
So
and there's some beautiful colours here, Jenny. And you were saying to me you don't necessarily do these yourself.
No, I don't.
But you've spun all of this.
Yeah, it's all hand spun. I spin about 60 kilos of wool a year.
Wow.
So that's about 600 skeins.
Wow, that keeps you busy.
So it really keeps me busy.
Keeps the hands occupied.
Yeah, it does. And I spin mostly to about a double knit kind of way, because I think that's a good for people to understand and to work with. And so on every skein there's always enough to make something with. So anything from like a hat or some mittens, or sometimes if I do a really fine yarn, then there'll be enough to make a shawl on it, but it just depends. And I also spin to order, so people can say, I want that colour in that thickness.
Sure.
I'll just do that for them.
Yeah.
So that's
when I was in the other day, you were talking about the yardage of your yarn. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Obviously for 100 grams, what's happening with that in the 100 gram skeins that we're getting there?
Well, this one has, this is 100 grams and there are 450 metres on there, and the one next to it is also 100 grams, but there are 200 metres on it, so it's just how fine you spin it.
Yeah.
You can, I sometimes can get like maybe 500-600 metres on a scale.
Sure,
for 100 grams, and then down to as little as 100, which is a really chunky kind of Aran weight.
Yeah.
So it really just does depend on what I'm doing and how I'm feeling.
Yeah, so if folks are buying hand-spun yarn with that kind of skill that's going into it, they have to think about their meterage and what they're making, and just making sure of that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a primary measurement when you're working with hand-spun yarn is the meterage, because it's quite dense. My hand-spun yarn, I can only speak for myself, my hand-spun yarn is quite dense in comparison with mill-spun yarns, because it's usually worsted or semi-worsted spun, so it's quite solid.
Yeah.
And so you don't get the meterage for the thickness. So
sure.
If you were to buy a commercial double knit weight, you'd probably maybe get about 350 meters or so on 100
sure.
grams, whereas with mine, double knit is coming out somewhere between 200 and 220.
Yeah.
So it's very different.
Sure.
But it's knitting up to the same tension.
Yeah. But buying this beautiful yarn, you're going to create something really special with this, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're going to create something that's you're going to keep and wear and treasure, so it's
And it's really durable as well. I mean, I've got things that I've made like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I'm still wearing them, and I wash them in the washing machine on a wool wash. So it's not. I mean, wool is a really robust thing. You've just got to be kind to it.
Sure.
And you can machine wash if you need to.
Yeah, and if you know what you're doing. I don't know if I would know what I was doing. I don't know if I would try it, but
yeah. A wool cycle, no more than 30 degrees, liquid detergent, never conditioner.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing.
Fine, and I don't mind at all. I don't mind doing that at all. But one thing I always do whenever I've made something is I will wash it as soon as I've made it, before I wear it or anything, because it just really changes the way it looks. It changes the stitches all just kind of relax together and even out across the work. I mean, I can show you a piece before and after if you like, and you can see that.
That would be great. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And you've just a beautiful colour palette here as well, Jenny.
Yeah. So the solid colours are all. I buy all my fibres in, but I design all my blends. So, and they're all for somebody or for a place. So this one is probably one of my favourite colour blends of all, and this one's called Milldown Rocks. And there's a little beach that's fairly close to where I live, and it's the lateral moraine of a Scandinavian glacier, and so every single stone on the beach is a different colour.
Amazing.
And all the lichens and and everything around it. So that's this one.
Yeah.
This one here is this one's called Autumn on the Reston Road, and the road out of my village is the Reston Road, and it's full of there's a beautiful stone wall with all the lichens growing on it, and it's got beech trees and chestnut trees, and that's the colours from that. And this one's called Troprain Meadows. So that one's for Troprain Law, which is in East Lothian, and that was the view on Midsummer's Day.
Beautiful colours in there.
They're really nice.
It's a summer's day.
Yeah. So everything, I'm inspired. And then sometimes people ask me to design colours for them. So this one here, this one's called Felicity, and this was done for an artist called Felicity Swan, who's the most amazing artist. And so we designed the colour together for her, using some of her colours that she uses in her artwork.
I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there's some beautiful purple hues in there as well, isn't there, as well as it?
Well, if you want to see that pre-spun, then this is what the fibres are before you spin it.
Yeah.
So they look very different.
Yeah, they do.
Know?
Yeah.
If I put them together, you might not think that you would get
no,
one
you
from
wouldn't.
the other.
Yeah.
But all those colours are in there, and it just depends on how you spin them as
Sure.
to how they turn out. So
that's amazing. I would never guess that you would be able to get that from that.
No.
Yeah.
And people come in and they're really wowed by all these really bright fibres, but when I'm designing those colours on the fibres, this is what I'm aiming for, is the yarn. It's not this ultra garish kind of stripiness that's going on there. It's this lovely tweedy kind of look that's happening over here is what I'm aiming for.
Really beautiful. It's a real skill, and I'm sure lots of people who are watching will could only aspire to be able to do something like that. What you create with these fleeces, Jen, it's amazing, really amazing. So Jen, you were just talking over there about the difference between a blocked piece and a piece that's in progress. Talk to us about that process and what happens with it.
So these two shawls this is the unblocked shawl. This is the one that's working in progress, and this has been blocked out. It's gone a little bit curly because it's been sat in the window around a hanger, but they're both a mixture of Shetland and Corriedale fibres, and the stitches here on this one, you can see it look quite, I would say quite stiff, and they're not very coherent. But when you wash it and stretch it and block it, the texture really changes, and it kind of it kind of just blossoms, and the stitches kind of just join together properly.
It's like it blends together to do what it's meant to do, isn't it?
It does. And I think that's a property of Shetland wool. That I don't know if people have done a lot of colour work, but whenever you make anything, they just kind of the Shetland colours just kind of melt together and just form a really nice texture, and that's what happens when you block this wool. The stitches just relax into each other.
And I guess some folks who might not be as experienced would buy some lovely wool like this and look at the process and think, oh, I don't know if I like that because of the way it's turning out.
Exactly.
But without recognising there's a whole process to go. So it's a great learning point, absolutely.
It is. It's really important, because you might a lot of people actually, older knitters, don't tend to block, and I'm just constantly amazed that get it washed.
That's it. Just get it done.
It really changes. It
Absolutely.
really changes.
Great advice. Brilliant.
There
we go. Well, Jenny, I'm so glad to have found your shop here in Berwick, and I'm so appreciative of you being willing to show the viewers around. So thank you very much. Every good blessing for your business, and please do come and see Jenny if you're in the area, or I'll put along the bottom here the details of how you can find her shop. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Well, good morning. It's day 5 and here I am at the Scottish border. That means I am heading home today. It's a little bit breezy and a little bit moist. It's been lovely to be in Northumberland. It's like a second home to me. I'm going to try some yarn shops on the way home. Needless to say, no ferries tonight, so it's a night with my mother. But I'm sure I'll get home eventually at some point. Once Storm Babette moves off to wherever she's going next, I'm going to get in the car before I blow away. Goodbye.
And just like that, I'm back at home, back in my little office. It's now Sunday afternoon. I managed to get back over yesterday morning on the first ferry of the day, which meant being in the ferry queue at 6 a.m. On the standby queue. Managed to get on. Of course, they're clearing the backlog from Friday, where all the ferries were cancelled due to Storm Babette. So after I saw you on that very windswept A1 by the Scottish border, I did manage to get into Edinburgh. I tried very hard to visit some of the yarn shops in Edinburgh, but I had the car with me and pretty much all of the yarn shops were next to impossible to park reasonably at. So I need to have a day where I can get to Edinburgh, get in public transport and get around some of those lovely yarn shops. So my apologies to all those lovely yarn shops that I didn't manage to get to. However, I did manage to shoot across to Glasgow and popped into the Yarn Cake, which used to be, I think, on Queen Margaret Drive or Great Western Road, but they recently moved to Crow Road in Partick in Glasgow. And they were kind of getting ready for the Glasgow, I can't remember what you call it, what was it? What do you call that thing? The Glasgow School of Yarn festival weekend thing. So they had some, I think they probably had some of the stock over there. They certainly had the coffee machines over there. Didn't get a coffee. I didn't think I was in the market for buying any wool. I really wasn't, but I've been noticing on Facebook that the Fisherman's Kep page have got a Fisherman's Kep-along. And so when I got into the Yarn Cake and I spotted their lovely little shelves of Jimison and Smith jumper weight yarn, of course, I had to buy some. And will you have a look at this? Oh, look at those autumn colours. Aren't they just so glorious? And I've got a darker brown here at home, which will pair lovely with this as I knit a Fisherman's Kep in those colours. Those are kind of my colours, really. My autumn vibe colours, although I'm wearing grey today. I love those colours. And so that is going to be, I'm sure, a Fisherman's Kep. I'm really looking forward to that. So listen, thank you very much for bearing with me through this little bit of a different episode. I hope you enjoyed the trip to Northumberland. I hope you enjoyed Jennie's interview. Wasn't that just great? She was so full of information, so full of inspiration, and so much that she just was desperate to impart to you. I didn't really have to prompt her with anything at all. She just loved speaking about her yarn and her process and her creativity. Please do look down in the details below and have a look at Jennie's presence on Facebook and some details of how to find the shop. She's on Facebook as Sky Blue Pink Designs, and I'm sure you'll pop over there and give her some love. I think she's on Instagram as that as well. And just in case you don't already know, I'm also on Instagram as the Albanach Knitter. It'd be fantastic if you would come over and join us there. Lots of in-between episode yarny and live goodness happens over there. And I also have a rather not yet used Albanach Knitter Facebook page, but if you hop over there and give it a like, that would be another place to have some interaction as well. Spend a lot of my life on Facebook because various other bits of work happen there, both with Sannox and church stuff and just life in general. So if you want to interact over there, please do. Also, if you want to pop over and give some support at ko-fi.com, this is the address here. Go and have a look, and it'd be good to meet you there. And of course, there are opportunities to become a member of the site, which really do help just fund the various bits and bobs and the effort that goes into making this wee podcast for you. Thankful to so many who support in that way. But of course, watching YouTube and the videos here is a great way to support the channel as well. I really do appreciate all your input, all your friendship, all the contact through the social medias and all that sort of stuff, and you make a happy man very old. Anyway, it's good to see you today. I hope you have a great week, and look forward to seeing you probably on an extra stitch sometime soon, and I'm sure episode 11 will be along sometime in November. But for now, Beaniach agus Martian Leif and Drasta. Cheerio. Goodbye.